Go ahead and get started. So welcome everybody. I'm Kim Riley and I'm the president of Cleveland's Hylant office. Just want to welcome all of you to take time out of your day today to hear from these CEOs that we have gathered. I also want to take a moment and thank Team NEO for being such a great partner for our region and for participating today and sharing your data analytics with the people who are going to participate. I also want to thank my friends and fellow CEOs who are participating today from their business environments to share with us what they've encountered and what they're doing to get their business to open back up today. It's a really exciting time for us. A little bit about Hylant. Hylant is a fourth generation family owned business. We are the largest independently owned insurance broker in the state of Ohio, and that's exactly why we feel like it's crucial to be involved in economic development for our region. We are involved with Jobs Ohio and also with our economic partners in each of our regions that we are headquartered in. That is exactly why I am on the board of Team NEO. I also assist with driving development for them with Dawn Southern, who you'll hear from at the end of the webinar. But I'll tell you what, during this crisis, we have seen Northeast Ohio's manufacturers and all of our other businesses rise up to the occasion and fight to find solutions for each of our businesses, our communities, as well as each of our employees that are employed by us. I am proud to be a member of our Northeast Ohio business community, and I am excited to hear from Team NEO and my fellow CEOs today. So welcome, and with that, I'm going to turn it over to Bill Kaler, who is the CEO of Team NEO. Welcome, Bill.
There you go.
We're having a technical difficulty, so bear with us.
Unmute yourself, Bill.
Are we good? Are we good?
You're good.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Kim, for your kind comments about Team NEO and my partners in economic development. And thank you all for joining us today to hear about our work. What we've been doing over the last 7 or 8 weeks have been focused on engaging companies and their leaders by providing reassurance, reliable information, anything we can do to help address the strategic or liquidity issues that companies have. It means being an effective and consistent source of information between Jobs Ohio and our local stakeholders, and oftentimes information going both ways, from Columbus locally and then locally to Columbus to help provide information that help guide some of the policy decisions that we're making. And a lot of times that has meant relying on our unique research capabilities, the subject matter expertise of my partners, maybe information we have gathered through the series of conversations we've had. And the issues we've talked about relate to various workforce issues, accessing SBA or other federal funding programs, supply chain or business disruption issues, PPE has been a big one, and then of course liquidity and growth. In providing support for companies, it's taken a lot of forms, either capital or finding ways to increase liquidity through some existing Jobs Ohio programs. Oddly enough, it's been a surprise to us, but our normal course growth project activity has actually been fairly robust. And we've done a lot of matchmaking with companies around PPE related issues. A venture between Eaton and RP+M relating to face masks would be an example, or Primolux and Plastipack relating to hand sanitizer, where we brought those folks together to help identify how they could help each other produce some product that is obviously sorely needed. The common themes around that is leveraging our relationships, our insights, our resources to help these companies do what they need to do to continue to grow. As we look forward, we think there's a lot of opportunity despite the challenges we face in the near term. We're talking a lot about onshoring and reshoring opportunities. We're talking about the opportunity to encourage more technology adoption to improve supply chain visibility within the corporate environment. Clearly, there's a need for more expertise around workforce safety and insights related to that. A lot of people are going to be spending more of their resources on virtual business models. And we can't forget about higher education, reskilling, retraining, things of that nature. We think Northeast Ohio has some great opportunities, and we are focused on finding ways as we will move forward to accelerate the growth, to unlock some of the obstacles and challenges. And we're doing it with the public sector, private sector, and philanthropy. It's been really gratifying for us to see the civic leadership that has emerged over the last 6 to 8 weeks as we've all been in this, and we think that it's going to require much, much more in order to pull us out. So that's what we're focusing on, and I was gratified to hear Kim's comments about the importance for to have an engaged economic development network and an engaged set of corporate leaders who are going to have to partner with us as we go. You're going to hear Jacob in a second, Jacob Doritsky, who's our head of research, talk about the economy. But before I give it to Jacob, let me just say thanks to John Grabner and Kim Riley and Hylant for partnering with us on this. Kim is one of the most engaged members of our board, very thoughtful, strategic thinker, supportive, and committed to providing candid advice, which I always need. And all of our speakers here, you'll see, have some great insights. We consider them friends of Team NEO because of their involvement in so many different ways. So thank you all for your support. I feel fortunate to have a strong base of corporate partners at our ready to help us, guide us, and we will leverage them as we move forward. So with that, let me introduce you to Jacob Doritsky, who's been with Team NEO now for 10 or 12 years. A very well-respected voice around the Northeast Ohio economy. And I hope you find interesting what he will share with respect to the path forward. Jacob?
Great, thanks, Bill. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Good, okay. All right, well, good morning, everyone. And as Bill said, thanks to John and to Kim. I'm gonna be fairly brief, but I did want to share some of the early insights we're seeing about the potential impact of COVID on the Northeast Ohio economy. Small caveat, we use Moody's analytics data, a national and global source of economic data, and look at their projections for how they think the impacts they're seeing nationally and globally will eventually impact Northeast Ohio. It is very early. Unfortunately, over the past 2 months, as we've tracked this data, it's gotten worse, not better, and we suspect these still might be somewhat conservative. In the short term, as this remains a health crisis, there's little we can do to fully understand the macroeconomic impact of what's going on and how wide-reaching those will be. But we do want to track it over time, as Bill said, not to be tone deaf, but to understand how we pivot our own strategies for how we talk to companies and think about the market reaction. So what are we seeing? Well, initial projections show that declines in employment and GDP for Northeast Ohio in 2020 will be around 5 to 6% total at an annualized rate. So you'll see steeper cuts in the second quarter, but significant declines of 5 to 6%. That would put us about 1 to 2% worse than the US at this point in time. Part of that being our disproportionate base of manufacturing is still being impacted more than the country as a whole. We still have a couple of compounding challenges to that. As we hit the L1 recession, relatively mild in the US, we hadn't brought back the jobs we lost during 01 when the Great Recession hit. Hadn't brought those jobs back, unfortunately, and then the COVID crisis hit. So really over the past 2 decades have gotten hit 3 different times and disproportionately harder than the US. As we think about sectors that will see the biggest declines, ranging from professional services and headquarters at 2 to 3% losses in GDP and employment, and looking at other sectors, some of the most important sectors of manufacturing to our economy, automotive, machinery, aerospace, metals, with declines anywhere from 15 to 25%. And as I said, those are probably conservative, likely to see those grow as we look into the new sets of data that come out next month. The degree to which Northeast Ohio is impacted is based on a lot of different factors, and those are the things we're trying to think through right now. Some are supply chain disruption issues, people who can't source product from Asia or from Europe. Some, as it relates to automotive and aerospace, certainly relate to a lack of product demand. And surprisingly, we're still hearing about challenges as it relates to talent shortages in the market. We have an aging workforce and a fairly flat population. Some of those things could become even more heightened coming out of this crisis. So, don't want to be tone deaf. We are looking at different ways to pivot our own strategies internally. I think the things we're going to pay a lot of attention to coming out of this, certainly talent gaps, which you've looked at, but supply chain and onshoring opportunities, merger and acquisitional potential and threats, new market growth opportunities, and then any consolidations which might be taking place. So with that, I'd like to introduce John Grabner, who is the Vice President and Business Development Leader for Hylant.
Thanks so much, Jacob. Appreciate it very much. Good comments. Unfortunately, they're sad comments. But yes, I'm John Grabner. I'm with Hylant. I have the pleasure of working with Kim and the rest of the team here, interfacing quite a bit with Bill Kaler and his team over at Team NEO. First, a little bit about this event. This is unusual. This has not been done before because I'm calling it a virtual visit. So you're going to meet these business leaders who are going to be in their places of business. And that's starting with construction, going with logistics and food and beverage, going to manufacturing and distribution, and finally technology solutions. So you're gonna learn some really great practices from all these folks. And they all have three things in common. One, they're great places to work, and you will see they have very low employee turnover, and they treat their people really well. And they're always looking for good people, so anyone's listening, pay attention to that. Second thing is, these folks have all done work with Team NEO. Team NEO has been there to help them. Whether it's expanding their business or putting software solutions in, Team NEO has done a great job, but every one of the panelists are going to do it. And finally, they're all friends of mine. That's the cool thing about it. So a couple of housekeeping items. So this webinar is being recorded, and we're going to send it to everyone afterwards. And I'm also trying to convince Jodi to actually put a discount code in for a Vitamix maybe. So we'll see what happens with that. Second thing, there's going to be a chat room. So everyone is on mute. But there's going to be a chat room so you can submit your questions into the chat room, and we'll leave time at the end for everyone to talk about what's going on. So with that, I'm going to click videos and unmute microphones and invite people to start joining our event. And technology is wonderful. God, I love this. Mike, Boddy, and Jodi. Oops, Jodi. Bear with me, we're having fun. Aren't we all learning some new things? Isn't this fun? Yeah, we should pretty soon have 5 screens that you will be seeing. There's Jodi on there, and you'll see now pretty soon Andy, who's the last one? Don Taylor, who's going to join us, and they're pretty interesting places they're talking from. So with that, I'm going to introduce our first one with representing the construction industry, and that is Don Taylor. Don's the president and CEO of Welty Building Company, and they're headquartered in Akron. They are the premier construction management firm in the entire country. Some of the more recognizable projects they have done has been the Goodyear and Timken headquarters, the most recent addition to the Canton Football Hall of Fame, and of course, Akron Children's Hospital, a really good one there. I really enjoyed seeing that one. Of note is Don's approach to construction industry, which he defines it as employing lean building science. And I'm very familiar with lean because that's how I ran my company. But these lean principles give him the ability to focus on adding value by identifying and eliminating waste. This has also resulted in projects coming in 20% below budget and completed months ahead of time. Welty's also taken their model to another level where they get involved in the economic development interface, the design, construction, and the furnishing, so it's a turnkey proposition. With that, turn it over to Don Taylor.
Thank you, John, and welcome everybody. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here. It's an honor. I am actually not sitting in front of a real job site. This is a virtual, as we have most of us have been doing things virtually. But what you see in the background is Goodyear's corporate headquarters, which will look very similar to what Northeast Ohio hopefully will be experiencing here in the next few months with the announcement of Sherwin-Williams construction and the expansion they're going to be doing. Our firm leads the team for the expansion of Sherwin-Williams, along with our joint venture partner, Gilbane, another good Northeast Ohio company who served this area well. So we're very proud of that, and Team NEO did an excellent job of helping Sherwin-Williams through the economic development process to make this a possibility. So I'm happy to talk about what we've been doing and look forward to the questions. Thanks, John.
Great. Thanks so much, Don. Congratulations. That's awesome. The Sherwin-Williams headquarters. We're all very proud of that and proud of you guys doing that. Let's make sure everybody gets to help on that project. Next, I'd like to introduce is Warren Anderson, who's the president and CEO, and Mike Boddy, who is the chief operating officer at the Anderson-DuBose company. They're in Lordstown, Ohio, but they have perfected the supply chain logistics for food and beverage for McDonald's and Chipotle restaurants, which means that they have grown over the last 28 years to now they're supplying over 800 restaurants. 800 restaurants. Think all those frozen French fries. I think the best evidence of this is the fact that they are continually being asked to take on more territory. And recently they purchased a distribution facility in Rochester, New York, where they now serve all the McDonald's restaurants in Western Pennsylvania and Western New York, Eastern Pennsylvania and Western New York. Warren's also the chairman of Capital Distribution in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. Hey, Warren. And which services 2,100 accounts for Miller Coors, along with some other non-alcoholic beverages. Now that business is really busy now, I bet. Warren and Mike, I'll take it over to you guys.
Yeah, let me make a quick point, because that's sort of an interesting fact. Our food business, it's been a tough quarter. We're running about 15% behind where we were a year ago for the food business for McDonald's. On the other hand, our beer business is up 25%. We have Miller Coors, Corona, almost all the crafts. So one quick learning is when times are tough, be in the alcohol business.
Good.
Mike.
Thank you, Warren. John, thank you. Good morning to everyone out there and our fellow panelists, and thanks for having us on the webcast today. As you mentioned, John, Warren and I are in our Lordstown distribution center where we service two iconic customers in McDonald's and Chipotle over 5 states. And through this whole pandemic, it's obviously been an interesting time for everyone. For us, many new processes in how we do work internally and how we engage with our customers. It's been quite the challenge. And also just working through the fluctuation in case sales. As we first hit the pandemic, like most restaurants, it was a pretty significant hit. I'll say our customers have done a very good job of closing that gap. As Warren mentioned, we're still not quite back where we need to be, but optimistic as markets open up and as weather changes that we'll continue to close that gap and grow throughout the year. So look forward to answering questions on today's call, and thanks again for having us.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Warren and Mike. And you'll see everybody has got their background, which is where they're working. It's really kind of cool to see that. And those trucks are going to be loaded pretty soon. So I'll turn it over now to Jodi Berg. Jodi is a friend of mine. She's also the CEO and president of Vitamix. Well, that's a household name throughout the entire world. And she's a fourth generation family member of the company. And Vitamix is not only known for the great machines, but it's just how they treat food. They provide a healthy, easy, simple way to have food. Very delicious too. And if you own a Vitamix, like I do, you know it's probably one of the best appliances you've ever had in your life. What you may not know about Jodi is that she is she's a PhD in leadership. And what she has applied this to her beloved brand. And I can attest to her intellect because I was there for her PhD dissertation, which is a real neat experience. Jodi, all yours. Jodi, all yours. Are you self-muted, Jodi?
Yes, I was. Can you hear me now? All right, so thank you, John. So good morning. I am coming to you live from our operations center in Strongsville, where a good portion of our products are made right here in Ohio. We have 2 facilities here, and our nearly 100-year-old young company is focused on liberating and nourishing the zest for life by making healthy food simple and delicious. That's what it's about. So you can only imagine that during this pandemic, how busy we actually are with everyone trying to stay healthy is more paramount than ever. So our first priority was keeping our employees safe. And so our first phase was to create a zero germ transfer environment. Not only do we follow all the guidelines set by CDC and the governor's office, but we're talking to our employees regularly to saying, what else could we possibly do to not only keep you safe, but help you feel safe? Because those are really two different things. And our employees came together and created our individual workstations. I don't know if you can see them behind us, but in just a few days, they put the first version together, which was not transparent. And it's so strange to come to our facility and it was quiet. Nobody was talking. And we asked them why. They said, well, we can't see our neighbors. And it was just weird talking to like walls. So we've created transparent versions that are very easy to clean and keep them sterile. And now the buzz is back in our facility, and it's really exciting. So our second phase was business continuity. And a key part of that was not only making sure that we're be able to build and sell our products, but we can still find the joy in that process. So we're communicating frequently, obviously, with our employees and providing tools to help them handle their anxieties about finances, health, and the future. And we offer online exercise and cooking classes. A coronavirus bingo was an idea one of the employees came up with. And we have a children's coloring contest to develop all of our signage to remind them what's so important. It's working because we are bringing on 37 new employees this week.
Woo-hoo!
Yes, woo! And we're adding another line. So things are going really well. And the third goal, which is what we're into now, is business transformation. I like to call it OPC, opportunities post-COVID. So what are the opportunities that are available to us on the other side of this COVID experience? And the easiest time to make a change is when something is already in motion. The entire world is in motion right now. So anything you want to change, anything that needs to be adjusted, now is the time to do it. So we are already in the third phase of focusing on that change. And in closing, I want to share an interesting note. So about 2 years ago, my sister and I started writing a historical fiction book that brings our 100 years of brand to life through a very magical journey that the next generation travels on. So in writing this book, pre-COVID, it's coming out in the fall, by the way, but in writing this book, there's a line in it where my father, referring to a battle within the family in the third generation in the 1990s, says, "This is the monsoon of my generation." I lived through that monsoon with him, and I never thought I would thank that generation for going through that, because they prepared me for the monsoon of my generation. So I'm thanking them right now. There's another line in the book, though, where my great-grandfather, we all call him Papa Barnard, the founder of Vitamix, he says, "Take control of the past and let your heart lead the way." If there's one thing our century-long company history has shown me, is that we can weather the storms by remaining true to who we are and by focusing on changing the lives of other people and trying to make them better. So I look forward to sharing anything about our journey that may help you. I look forward to learning from these esteemed panelists that are joining me, and see if anyone else can find their OPC and find joy in the process. Back to you, John.
Great. Thanks, Jodi. And your spare time, everyone, that's one lesson to learn. Try to write a book. So I'm going to turn now to Andy Jones over there, my newest friend. Andy is the CEO of MCPc, which has got 3 facilities in Northeast Ohio. And it's really a cool company because they're in a very relevant space right now. As we know, we're doing a lot of things electronically. Of course, almost everything nowadays we're doing electronically. And he provides protection services for the security of everything electronic. So, of course, he's busy right now. And when I met Andy, I quickly determined MCPc had the right person there, because when he was earlier in his career, he was a paratrooper in the United States Army. And therefore, he told me, when the bullets are flying, I'm ready to jump into the crisis. So Andy, you're the right guy. It's all yours, buddy.
Good morning, John. Good morning, everyone. As you can see, I'm sitting in one of our facilities. This actually is this room we refer to as our Cyber Warfare Command Center. It's where we quarantine our best and brightest to help customers determine what's going on in their environment and get them back to a stable place as quickly as possible. This room in this facility is located inside of our Security Operations Center based here in Midtown that Team NEO was very instrumental in helping us source the location and move in. So thanks to Team NEO and everyone. Much like Jodi was saying, our business really centers around 2 foundational elements. It's really about security and sustainability. for the last 10 weeks, about 35% of our staff, what we like to refer to as our frontline associates, those men and women that are actively out there engaging in the environment, whether that's healthcare environments or manufacturing floors, they've been coming into our facilities as well as going to those customer environments, delivering those critical services around security and sustainability. The remaining 65% or so of our associates are able to perform in a much more logical function, and as such, they're performing their services for our external and internal clients literally from anywhere. So pretty much from day one, we really haven't missed a beat. When it was time to take the appropriate steps from a physical security standpoint, we dispatched those workers that could be dispatched and sent them to their home environment, and have continued to work through this. So looking forward to the conversation.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Andy. Good stuff out there. And frontline associates, I like that term. So actually, several of you brought up the point about communicating with your employees and things you may have done differently. Don, I wonder if you can start off to say maybe how you've been doing things a little bit differently going forward, what you have been doing and what you might be doing going forward about communications.
Thank you, John. Interestingly, since I've taken over as CEO almost 20 years now, we every year do an engagement survey with employees, and I had finally gotten to the point where I didn't think that communication was fixable. Every year we'd get dinged on communication, no matter how much money we spent, no matter what we tried, we never could seem to get people satisfied with the right level of communication. We did 2 pulse surveys since we've gone to the work from home approach. And quite honestly, the approach that we have incorporated now, where we touch every single employee every single day, either individually or in their team group, from somebody from leadership being involved in those conversations. Our pulse survey now indicates that people view communication as being significantly better than it's ever been. So one of the things coming out of this, which is amazing for us, one of the things coming out of this is these huddles that we're having every day. They seem like they're in some ways maybe a waste of time, where why are we doing this? But they want to know how they're included, how they're being a part of things, and how the world is affecting them. And the communication has really helped us to be more effective in having them feel like they're a part of the organization. So we'll be keeping that as we go forward. John?
Excellent. Got the pulse. Andy, how about you? I know when we were talking about this, you had a couple of good things you were doing.
Yeah, I'll build on Don's statements. We too have always struggled in our employee surveys around communication. It never seems like we can get it right. And frankly, we too have also experienced a pretty significant uptick in feedback from our associates that we seem to be doing it right now. We radically increased our internal meeting requirements. So from an executive standpoint, we went from a daily war room meeting that started at the top of the morning to that being pushed down through all levels of the organization, whether those were physical stand-ups in the shop floors or whether those were virtual stand-ups with the employees that are remote and logical. One of the things that I think that we've kind of, I think we always knew this, but maybe didn't appreciate it to the same level. I think to some extent there's a generational issue at hand here. I know that our Gen X and older associates tend to be okay with less frequent communication, but then our younger generations, there's an expectation of always on, always available communication around what's going on in the company and what's going on in the world outside. I think we have to step up as leaders and embrace that new type of change, that new type of information sharing. So that's been some of the things that we've been doing, and it's had a huge impact on the psyche of the organization and our ability to continue executing.
Just like this webinar. I mean, that's how we're communicating now. So I want to turn to supply chain, because I know Warren and Mike and Jodi, but first Warren and Mike, I know you are dependent upon suppliers to you, and then your customers are dependent upon you as a supplier. How has this changed? How has the pandemic changed what you're doing in terms of communication with your suppliers and your customers?
Yeah, thanks, John. I think we thought we had a pretty good routine with our customers and suppliers all along, but obviously with all these changes and changing contact points, we had to reevaluate that. We have field service folks that are very involved in visiting restaurants and making sure that we're doing the right things on our connection with AD, but also what we can do beyond that to help them. Obviously, in this time of limiting social contact, we had to get rid of that for, temporarily pause that out. And that became a challenge for us. So how do we stay connected in a time where they probably need more of Anderson-DuBose to help them? We've really initiated much more contact through calls and daily connections with them. And as our business has changed and theirs has changed, it's really been helpful. We still lack that that interpersonal, in-person discussion, but it seems to have worked pretty well. The second part, I would say, on the corporate side, dealing with our suppliers and our corporate partners versus the restaurants, is through this period, we've had routine calls and they've stepped those up more weekly and daily. But it's really provided an opportunity for Anderson-DuBose to be leaders in that space. So we are one of 4 distribution companies for our main customer, McDonald's, and we're number 2 in the system. There's one really big player. But through this, when they're looking for folks to lead or take charge or have ideas, our executive team and really our manager level being involved in that has really brought some amazing ideas and really challenged things. So time through a lot of challenges has given us an opportunity to shine.
Oh, that's great. Jodi, I'm curious, well, before we get started, also keep the chat questions coming in on the chat room. If you got any questions for these business leaders, I'm sure they'll be glad to help you on this, because best practices, we want to be able to share some best practices. Jodi, how about you when it comes to your suppliers and your customers? How have things changed for you a little bit?
So we have had a very strong culture for a very long time. And as soon as this hit, since we'd already established one of our key values being family, we were able to extend that family to our customers and family to our suppliers. So as soon as this hit, it was amazing how everybody came together, and we were immediately on calls to say, what can we do for you and what can you do for us, and just having those conversations. So that really helped us a lot early on and continues to this day. But the other thing that we're doing is we're looking at, as I said, we're in OPC mode now, opportunities post-COVID, and we're looking at what would it look like? How do we work with our suppliers who, now our organization, a very small amount of our components come directly from China to us, but several of our suppliers have a lot of the components that they need coming from China, and then they're working with those components before it comes to us. So we're working with them to say, what are the opportunities for possibly onshoring some of the manufacturing of some of those components, or possibly some of the raw materials, if at all possible, to bring them on. Now, this is where Team NEO comes into play, because our suppliers from the business that we're giving them, that's not big enough to really support onshoring of something that's not here. There's a reason that it's not here right now. But if we pull together as a community, as Northeast Ohio, as all of Ohio, and say, what components would we really love to have manufactured right here in Northeast Ohio, because we all need them, maybe we have that opportunity to bring some of this back to the States. And so that's one of the things that we're already in the mode of with our suppliers.
Good. And if everyone can see Jodi's screen, she's got the American flag proudly hanging in her assembly manufacturing facility there. Good stuff, Jodi. I had one question here for Andy from the chat room. Andy, have you any silver linings that you can talk about that have come from this situation?
You know, and actually, I'll build on what Jodi just said. We've always tried to have a culture of family inside the organization, and I would say that as it always is in times like this, it tends to bring organizations and people and teams together much closer. The increase in communication, the frank transparency around what's really going on in the world from a financial standpoint and from a health standpoint has allowed us to bring our collective management team to, I'll say, the greatest level of alignment I've seen in my 10 years in the organization, as well as our ability to communicate with our clients in a crisp and concise way. So it's, I've seen the best of the best come out of our associates, whether it's volunteering for the extra hours that's needed to cover a client demand, and that could be a healthcare customer that needs support right now more than any, or our leadership team taking on a much more vocal, much more prescriptive approach around where we're headed and what we're doing. So I think that, combined with some of these opportunities to look at some of the decisions, to Jodi's point, that we've made as a society or as a country over the last 15, 20, or in some instances 40 to 50 years, and maybe reevaluate do those reasons and rationales still hold up? Should we be doing more locally if we can, even if there is a slight increase in cost? in order to protect our supply chain, protect our associates, protect our economy. I think we'll see that play out over the next several months.
Good question, whoever that was, and great answer. Andy, for all those on this, that's one of the good take-homes you can take from this, is what's a silver lining that it's been on this thing. Out of curiosity, Warren and Mike, has there been a silver lining for you from all this you can think of?
Yeah, John, I would say it's really developed our management team. You know, sometimes it takes years to go through some situations, really to develop those skills and be put in those situations. And through this, we've seen so many changes and, you know, dealing with employees, dealing with customers, making operational changes on the fly. So I think it's, you know, our team has become so battle tested. It's really expedited their growth that I know in the future that, you know, our future leaders, we've developed them fairly quickly at this time. I think the other silver lining, let's say, is, you know, we pride ourselves on a strong culture, really associate first and customers. And you say that and you get in those routines and you know it's true. And you know how much we talk and care about them. Through this, I would say a lot of the early communication and the two-way feedback is how much they're concerned about the company. And obviously everyone's concerned, you know, for employment, but really concerned about Warren, the future of his company and our customers, and what they could do to help out. So I think we always knew that, but really it told us our people cared probably as much as us. That was good to know.
Yeah, we started something where we had weekly calls with not just our associates, but also with their spouses and significant others. So we were able to touch a lot of people in our sort of environment, if you will, that went beyond the folks that just work for us. And I can't tell you the kind of dividends that we got both ways in talking to families that work for us.
Another great take home there. Thanks, Warren. Thanks, Mike. And I would say to everybody listening to this, all four of the screens you see up there, I think they'll all say the same thing. Their people really care about the companies. And that's really a nice testament. I know when I was talking to each of you before this, Don Taylor brought up what he's doing to kind of build the foundation for the future. Construction has slowed down a little bit, let's all admit. But instead, he's doing some things that are kind of neat, that are building the foundation. Don, you want to talk about that a little bit? I think you're muted, Don. Hopefully I didn't.
Sorry. One of the things that we require on our onboarding is a book called Water the Bamboo. And just to give you a quick overview of that, giant bamboo takes 2 years for the seed to actually germinate and actually break through the surface of the ground. Once it breaks through, in 60 days, it can grow 90 feet. So it looks like it's grown really, really fast, but it took a long time to get to the point for that to happen. So for us in our business, it's the same thing. We have a very long lead cycle on sales. There's years that go into building relationships to be able to take on $1 billion project or the kind of work that we do. And so one of the things we looked at in the pandemic was, well, a lot of our clients are shut down. A lot of their buildings are empty. And why don't we've got people that we want to keep. We have a team that we want to keep together. Let's make an investment in the relationship and go back to some of our clients and do a once through on their building. You know, what kind of problems are they experiencing? What kind of issues need to be corrected? And just volunteer to go do that for our clients. You know, some things we can fix now, some things we can help them prioritize and put a price tag on that they might want to do in the future. But it was our way of, I guess, investing in that. You know, I don't know that there will be a return on this investment immediately, but I can guarantee long term, you know, this will be a part of watering our bamboo, and years from now, we'll be getting the return for having done that now. Thank you, John.
Another great take home, everybody. Water the bamboo. Got to buy that one. And again, in your spare time, either read a book or write a book. I have a question here, which I'm going to direct at Jodi, because this is kind of an interesting one. What are some of the biggest challenges you have faced in the last 2 or 3 months coming back to Vitamix?
So that's interesting, John, because one of our biggest challenges was helping people know and feel safe. And so the first week that we went into stay-at-home mode, even though Vitamix was considered essential for multiple different reasons, we made a decision as a company to shut everything down and told all of our employees, even the ones that could work from home, and we said, take the week, figure out your family, figure out the kids are now home, the spouses are working from home as well. You got everything has changed. How you prepare fields, everything has changed. I said, go home and figure it out for a week. And then it was the next week where we said, okay, now we're going to ramp up and we're going to, with the people that feel safe and that are confident, and we're going to let them communicate with you how they feel. So it's not coming from upper management, but it's coming from your fellow employees that said, yes, I want to go back and I want to test drive it for everybody. So we had this group that test drove it. So by the third week, when the governor was saying, no, it's still getting worse, we had all of our employees talking to all the other employees saying, no, it's good. It's fabulous. I feel safe at work. I feel it's fun. Let's get out of the house. You can do this. And so I think that the hardest challenge was navigating through that and making sure that, first and foremost, people truly are safe. Like they can come into work and not come in contact with a single item. We even created little hand mitts that everyone wears on their badge. So you could just reach out, grab, it stretches. So you just grab what you need and then pull it back in and drop your hand out. You never have to touch it. I mean, everything that the employees came up with as far as ideas, we tried to implement it so that their ideas could help them feel safe. And the power of that was then they told everybody else. So
terrific. I think, everyone listening to these things, you're getting tremendous take home, I think, from this, but you're also learning that these ideas are coming from all the people, all the employees, all the associates in the company. And these are the leaders that are listening to them. Warren and Mike, I had a question that came up also, pivoting your company. So when this initially started, you mentioned that the restaurants were really shut down virtually. I mean, nobody was going to the restaurants. What did you do to pivot the Anderson-DuBose company in order to do the short-term survival for long-term success?
Well, we weren't really shut down. The restaurant portion of us dining in was shut down, but drive-through, let's say for McDonald's, was always open. So while we took a hit, we were still considered an essential business and still had to get product out. So it's really been a challenge more of managing in a reduced business environment with all our overhead, of which we have significant overhead. But fortunately, we still had to come in and provide a service to our customer, both with McDonald's and Chipotle.
Yeah, John, I would echo that. One of the things that makes us great is such honed processes and training and our people engagement, which is great, but it's very routine. And so you mentioned how do you pivot and the fluctuations that we were seeing early on and jumping day to day and trying to have operational excellence and assure a supply and take care of our people. And there was a couple of days early, it was really a challenge, right? Because it made us all think differently. I can tell you most of the good ideas that Jodi mentioned came from our people, right? Some of the things that we've worked quickly on changing process and getting things done where if you had told me a couple months ago, hey, tomorrow, you have 2 hours to figure this out, how we're going to deliver customers with reduced staffing and their hours, et cetera, it would have been a real challenge and I would have been concerned about service. But quickly, the right people that were close to it had the best ideas, right? And some of those ideas coming out of this, you mentioned earlier, foundational. I'm sure that when we go through this, we were always afraid to make change. But again, Jodi mentioned this earlier too, now is the time to make those changes and we've learned a lot. So the things that we pivoted are going to stay with us long term.
Oh, that's good. The long term, that's what I was curious about. What are some of the practices that will remain long term? Andy, I know we talked a little bit about what your company does and how significant it is right now in the electronic world we're living in. Could you give us a couple of things we, the listeners, and everyone should be doing other than contacting MCPc to have you service our electronics? What do you think we should be doing now?
Thanks, John. That's a great question. All of us have taken many steps, whether it's protecting the health of our associates or their families and providing information to educate them on the return to the work environment, the office environment, or the return to a factory floor. This teleworking idea that everyone is implementing at this point or has broadly adopted, while it's exposed this great opportunity to go out and function and be productive outside of the traditional office confines, it's also illuminated this whole new area of risk that I think many people don't take into consideration. To put it into kind of military parlance, I typically refer to it as your associates are operating outside of the wire right now. It's no different than the steps we took to protect associates, whether it's wearing masks when there's more than one person in a room, or the hand sanitization, what have you. We need to take extra precautions for our users in their home work environments, as well as additional training that's required to help protect them in that environment, as well as your corporate data. More and more of corporations' information is now outside of that protected wire as a virtue of this teleworking environment. And it's a requirement of the teleworking environment, but at the same time, we need to take those steps to help protect it. Probably the best data point I can give you, just in no different than this crisis is an opportunity to make changes, as Jodi suggested. It's an opportunity for maybe what we like to refer to as the bad actors to also make some changes. About 3 weeks ago, the Federal Bureau of Investigation released new data in one report that suggested that since COVID-19 has hit the U.S., and we're talking really that end of February, beginning of March, that cybercrime has quadrupled in the number of reports in that time frame. So if we think about our associates being safe at home, they're safer at home in most instances than maybe they are elsewhere, but your data and your corporate livelihood may not be. So I would encourage you to speak with your IT organizations, your chief security officers, and make sure that you have appropriately assessed the risk associated with sending those associates to work remotely.
Great, that's good stuff, Andy. And for everyone listening, I also want you to know that, as I mentioned, this is being recorded. It'll be sent out to everyone on this, and in addition, they'll have some contact information there. So Andy's contact information will be there as well if you need to get a hold of him regarding that sort of thing. As we go forward on this thing, I know that Don Taylor, I wanted to turn to you at this point because I know you've done some pretty innovative things, but the most exciting thing I heard in your introduction was the fact you won the Sherwin-Williams deal. God, we're just so thrilled for you. Can you give us a little insight on what we should be expecting with regards to that project?
Well, there's been a lot in the paper and news relative to the project. It involves a headquarters and it involves a new R&D facility. I think site locations have been announced as to where those two things will go. Obviously, the project's momentum has been affected by COVID as Sherwin-Williams deals with a multinational organization that needs to focus on taking care of their customers, and they are doing that. The project we expect will be turned back on full steam at the appropriate time, but we're continuing to do the planning for it. There's a lot of jobs, there's a lot of investment, there's a lot of Northeast Ohio will benefit. We're talking about 4,000 highly paid people that Team NEO, Jobs Ohio were able to keep in Ohio. And it was a very, very competitive field. And as you can imagine, with an organization like Sherwin-Williams, there were a lot of states that were making a hard play to get them. But the state of Ohio stepped up using Team NEO and Jobs Ohio to make sure that they were competitive in keeping this franchise organization in Northeast Ohio. So we're proud to be a part of it, and can't wait to make sure that we spread the wealth amongst those in the community. We're doing this project, as you had said, John, using a process called IPD. Many of you are familiar with construction management, but IPD is a fully integrated using lean building science, where we focus on making sure that we're eliminating waste, and we save our clients a lot of money by being much more collaborative than we are in a normal construction process. So it's very exciting. Thanks, John.
Yeah, good stuff. Thank you, Don. It's we're all excited. Speaking of excited, Jodi, I think you got somebody excited here also. When you're saying you might be doing some reshoring and bringing some of the supply chain back to the U.S., the person wants to know, how do you envision Vitamix looking a year from now with regards to supply?
Oh, that's a great question. So we made a decision many years ago that our core products were going to be manufactured right here in the United States. And the reason for that is because if you probably can't see enough of it behind, but we have all these different lines around me, and all of our lines are incredibly flexible and they're very hands-on. And the reason that works for us is because we're able to bring in components from outside, various different places. We try really hard to have as many of our components as within a 200-mile radius as possible, within a cost parameter. We have a little bit of flexibility if it's a little bit more expensive, but there's value other places. So we figured that part of the model out. Then if we have a big order that comes in, say maybe possibly one of the largest coffee chains in the world, and they would like a big order of tens of thousands of units, then we can shift our lines around, and within just about 2 to 3 hours, a line that was making household product, it is now making commercial product, and it's making this household product for TV. Now it's making it for a different distribution channel. So that's worked really well for us. So we love the ability to have our suppliers close so we can have conversations, we can have strategy, and we don't have all of that time lag of things being on the ocean and working their way over here. So it is kind of a dream of mine to say, how do we work collectively as a state to take advantage of bringing communities together? Before, it was tough sometimes to get the different organizations to say, yeah, that is something that makes sense. But now that things are in motion, there's more people that are stepping up saying, yes, protect myself, protect my organization, make sure that I've got a little bit more kind of influence and understanding of where my supply is coming from. So I'm hoping that this momentum is going to pick up, and with organizations like Team NEO that can spearhead this, we may be able to make some change that is going to help all of us.
That's cool. And just real quickly, Jodi, I don't know if people know, but the sales you have to restaurants versus households, what's the difference? What's the percentage difference in that, the split?
So we have a food service division and we have the household division. And food service is, I don't know, depending on what's going on in the world. Right now, that is the one that's hardest hit, as you could only imagine. But it would normally be about 20-25% of food service, and we're 75 to 80% selling to the consumer of people using it in their homes all over the world. We're over 100 countries, and that's Vitamix made right here in Northeast Ohio is going out to over 100 countries around the world. It's pretty exciting.
Yeah, well, I know from this call, people are going to ask Welty to build their next building. They're going to go to more McDonald's and Chipotle, and they're going to make sure they buy a Vitamix, and they're going to call up Andy to put some protection services in. This is going to be a great call, and I'll help Team NEO to help on all that stuff there. So I would like to wrap up, but and I'm going to turn it over to Dawn, but I'd like to go around with each person here just to get any final comments, words of wisdom, again, best practices, because that's one of the things I'm getting out of this more than anything, is you're sharing behind the scenes, literally where you're working, in addition to some of your management practices. So I'll start with Warren and Mike. Can you give us some of your best practices and tips and any comments, final comments?
One of my best practices, which is why Mike is here, is he's going to be my heir apparent. And I wanted him to be actively involved in the dialogue as we grow as an organization. So I'm going to turn it over to Mike, but I'm very pleased that you allowed me to have
Warren was reluctant to do this, everyone. He really wanted to take a back seat, but Mike, yeah, go for it, buddy.
Yeah, thanks, Warren. John, in closing, I'll say a couple of things. One, thank you for having us on that call, and thanks for all the panelists. Some great information and takeaways. Always learned something new and some great things today. I wanted to thank Team NEO really for the work that they've done with Anderson-DuBose over the years. When we moved to Lordstown, we collapsed 2 locations in Solon and Pittsburgh and built here in Lordstown in an area that we didn't know much about or have much presence, right? Their connection with the local leaders to help us to figure it out, and then really helping us to leverage tax credits and grants in order to grow was huge. And then also in 2017, we were fortunate to bring on additional business and expand the facility, and Team NEO was there again. So I can't say enough great things about their support and partnership with Anderson-DuBose. And lastly, I'll cascade up on Warren's comments. I think through this is, we have great managers and management team here, letting them be more involved and make decisions, which you're always, as key leaders, you're always, clear about. We found out quite a bit about them, and I think going forward, I'm excited about where we're going, that we really have battle-tested leaders that go in the future. As we have to pivot and be more agile, we're going to be prepared to do so. So thanks again for your time.
Thank you. Andy, how about you? Any final comments?
Yeah, so I'll echo those sentiments. Thank you for putting this together and hosting it. I've been taking notes of several of the comments and best practices that I plan on taking back to our organization. But one of the things that, and I mentioned to this last week, John, pain has this amazing ability to focus and sharpen the mind, whether it's physical pain or fiscal pain in the case of money, or maybe emotional pain. All of that pain, as much as we don't like it, it allows us to create a new level of prioritization. And I think right now there's a tremendous wealth of information that's out there, whether it's coming out of the federal government or their state and local governments or various healthcare organizations. There's a tremendous amount of information coming into our organization, as well as our organizations are pushing out. If you're familiar with the author Harari, he's the gentleman who wrote *Sapiens* a few years back, pretty popular book. His second book was called *Homo Deus*, and in the final chapter, he talks quite a bit about censorship. And he talks about this idea that in olden times, censorship was the ability to control the populace by filtering what information they had access to. It's kind of inverted in today's modern society. Censorship today is overwhelming us as human beings with the amount of information that's available, and we're unable to process it. So being able to prioritize what's important and knowing what you can safely ignore, that's probably the true magic as we go forward out of this crisis.
Good wisdom. We're an overload. Jodi, how about a final comment from you?
So way back when, my grandfather decided to move Vitamix to Northeast Ohio because he felt that the people in Northeast Ohio were the hardest working, most dedicated, smart, talented people he ever met. I have to thank him for that because he was so spot on. And our lesson, it's not a lesson learned, but best practice is all of what's happening around me, everything that you see, the reason that we're up and running, the reason that we're growing, the reason that we're hiring, the reason that the people are back to work is because of the people around us. We set our philosophies and said, here's the guidelines, work within this, now go make it happen. And just unbelievable amount of stuff came out of the very people that work every day, similar to the comments that have been made. We did a survey the other day to say how are we doing with COVID, and we scored 94% positive. And really people were saying, yes, we're a part of it. Thank you for including us. So I'd say that's a huge best practice. Most people are hopefully doing that already, but don't feel like you need to take this on by yourself or even with your leadership team to get everyone involved. The second best practice is really, if you are not in OPC mode yet, I can't tell you, you got to get there. You got to dream big. You got to think about the possibilities, watch the trends that are happening in your industry, because as soon as everybody really gets back on, we're going to freeze into a new normal again. And it's going to be that much more difficult to make changes and shifts in your industry. So reach out, talk to people, but get into that mode as soon as you can.
Great stuff. Thanks, Jodi. And Don, to wrap it up?
I would say I agree with Jodi. There's going to be winners and losers that come out of this, and if you're not actively engaged in being a winner and thinking differently and being innovative, you may be on the wrong end of that scale. Yeah. I probably could have learned this from Jodi had I just taken her to dinner and bought her dinner from a leadership standpoint. But going through the pandemic, I went from I had this fear of being accused of being a micromanager, but I had a misperception as to what micromanaging was. And I went from presiding over an organization that did fairly well to, because of the pandemic, having to participate actively. And there is definitely a difference between participating and micromanaging and presiding. And I guess the takeaway for me is, it's okay to be engaged. It's okay to be hands-on, and especially in a time like this, get in, make it happen, believe in your people, and we've seen them step up in amazing ways and really have a lot of confidence in them. So thank you, John.
Thank you all, my friends. Appreciate it very much, and especially the efforts to be broadcasting from where you are, and Don wearing the hard hat and Jodi wearing the face mask. I'm going to turn it over to Don Southard, who's with Team NEO now, provide some wrap-up comments for us. Do I ever unmuted you? Self-muted. Hand muted by the organizer. Wait a second, Dawn. You're self-muted, I think, Dawn.
While we're waiting for Dawn, John, I have that code you were asking about.
Can you hear me all?
Good. Yes, now you're on.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, thank you everyone for joining us. On behalf of Team NEO, we're extremely grateful for our partnership with Hylant and each of our panelists. It's your leadership and your active participation that's going to be instrumental as we collectively strive to advance Northeast Ohio. And we all have a great responsibility as we emerge from this economic disruption, and it's imperative that we all collaborate as we move forward. And it means leadership commitment from coordinated state, regional, and local strategies. It also requires that we think differently about how we leverage our region's strongest assets. Today you heard from our leaders in manufacturing and technology and distribution and construction, but Northeast Ohio is also home to renowned healthcare institutions, our workforce of more than 2 million people, higher education, and national research institutes. It's imperative that we work together as we rebuild supply chains, as we reinvigorate industries, and as we retrain our workers. Every business is going to have to pivot, and Team NEO is here to help. We're here to help with talent, we're here to help with research insights, and we're also here to help with site needs and direct access to state and level resources, including Jobs Ohio grants and loan programs, and other support to keep our economy moving. We're going to continue to keep you informed through email, through one-on-one, and through webinars like the one you're seeing today. Your leadership and your financial support and economic development is important now more than ever as we build our infrastructure for the 4.3 million people who call Northeast Ohio home. Reach out to Bill, Kaylor, to me, or to my colleagues at Team NEO, and John's going to be providing information to you on that. Together, we are going to maximize our region's total potential, and we will emerge a more unified and stronger community. I'll wrap with a quote from Sun Tzu. In the midst of chaos, there is also opportunity. Let's collaborate and seize the opportunities before us. We look forward to staying in touch. Have a good week.
Thank you, everybody. And the special code for the Vitamix will be coming in the email as well. All right, everyone. Thank you. Have a wonderful week, and thanks for joining us on this Monday morning. And again, all my panelists, you're the best. Bye-bye now.